Hello everybody, thank you for tuning in. In today's video I'm going to be measuring the oil clearance for my main journal bearings and my connecting rod bearings using plastic gauge. The reason why I want to measure the oil clearance is because I'm going to be replacing these bearings with some aftermarket bearings, and I don't trust these aftermarket ones fully, so that's why I'm going to be using plastic gauge to confirm that the oil clearance is within the proper specification. These are the part numbers that I came up with. I know one of them does say 3S GTE, but I guess it might be the same for the 5S-FE, even though the box does say 3S GTE on there. Alright, first thing I'm going to do before I actually use plastic gauge to measure the oil clearance is I'm going to just do a visual inspection, make sure there's nothing abnormal that occurred during shipping, no chips or anything like that. Just performed a visual inspection on all the bearings and they look good. Good practice to whenever you have a brand new part to compare it to your old part. This is my old one, this is my old bearing, and this is my new one. Putting it side to side, they look the same. Same size right here. So I'm going to go ahead and install the top portion of the bearing. Just line up this little tang right here to line up with that tang right there on the block. The only one that's going to be different is the third one. It's a little bit wider than the rest. The reason I know that this is the top portion is because, well, one, I just remembered from disassembly, but also notice this hole right here. There's also a hole right there on the block. That's where oil gets fed and, you know, feeds this bearing. Now that I've got the bearings installed on the top portion, I'm going to go ahead and install the crankshaft. So this right here is plastic gauge. This is the green kind, so it measures from 1/1000th of an inch to 3/1000th of an inch, which is what I need for my particular engine. It's a little string like this. You just want to cut it into pieces and lay it on top of the journal right here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Just make sure that you cut it with like a pair of scissors, because you don't want to stretch this out if you were like to rip it like this, because then you would get an inaccurate reading. Alright, I've got my piece cut out. I'm going to go ahead and lay it right here on this third main journal bearing. Or not bearing, main journal. Just like that. I've got the plastic gauge laid out on all 5 journals. So same thing on these main journal caps. There's a tang right here. Line it up with that right there. Just like that. Alright, so I've got all my caps installed. They're in their proper location. 1, 2. That 2 is kind of hard to see, but there is a 2 right there. And there's 3. 4 is also hard to see, and then 5. They're all kind of hard to see, but they're in their proper location, and then the way you're reading the number, you're reading it in this direction, like it's facing towards the front. So I'm going to go ahead and start tightening these all up by hand, and then after I tighten them all up by hand, I'm just going to torque them in their proper sequence. So you start from the middle and work your way outside, just like this, how I'm doing it by hand. I've got them all tightened up by hand, and just make sure, I forgot to mention before you start tightening them up by hand, that your caps are flush. So make sure there's no gap on all your caps. The size that you need for the bolts, for the main cap bolts, are 14. You use a 14mm socket. The torque specification is 43 foot-pounds. So I'm going to go ahead and torque it. I'm going to start from the inside and work my way out per the service information. Now that I've got this torqued down in its proper sequence, I'm going to go ahead and remove it and and you also want to remove it in its proper sequence. So start from the outside and then come inside. So it'd be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I'm gonna go ahead and remove them. Alright, now that the plastic gauge has been crushed, it's distributed in a way where I can take a measurement using this right here as my ruler. So I'm going to go ahead and cut a piece out. Note how there's 4 measurements here on this plastic gauge ruler. There's 1/1000th of an inch, 15/1000th of an inch, 2/1000th of an inch, and 3/1000th of an inch. So I'm going to go ahead and try to match up whatever is closest on here with what's laid out on my main journal. So it looks like the one that matches up closely for the main journal on number 3 is this one right here. That's 2/1000th of an inch. So I'm going to go ahead and look at service information and see if that's within specification. No work has been performed on my crankshaft, so I ordered a set of standard bearings. So I'm going to be looking at the standard specifications when I look at the main journal oil clearance. So for main journal number 3, it should be between 1/1000th of an inch to 1/1000th of an inch and 7/10. And the other ones, by other ones I mean main journal number 1, 2, 4, and 5, should be between 6/10 of a thousandth to 1/1000th and 3/10 of an inch. However, there is a limit, and the limit is 3/1000th of an inch and 1/10. And since with the plastic gauge I measured 2/1000th of an inch, we are within the tolerances that is provided within the service information. So main journal number 3 checks out good. So this is the main journal number 1. It's also 2/1000ths of an inch, so that one's within specification. This is main journal number 2. It's also 2/1000ths of an inch, which is within specification. This is main journal number 4, which is also 2/1000ths of an inch, which is within spec. This is main journal number 5, which is also 2/1000ths of an inch, which is within specification. So now I can confidently say that these aftermarket main journal oil bearings are going to work since they had the proper oil clearance according to the plastic gauge. So I'm going to go ahead and just wipe all this plastic gauge off on the crankshaft and the bearings. I'm going to go ahead and assemble it all back together with assembly loop, and then I'm going to go ahead and check the connecting rod bearings and just make sure that those are within the proper specification as well. Alright, since I'm going to be installing the pistons, I'm going to go ahead and lube up the cylinder walls with some oil. So this has a little tang on there, that has a little tang on there. Just want to get them to line up inside like that. There's no piston rings installed, so it's going to be easy to go down in there. Of course, this is not the final assembly, this is going to come out. So I'm just going to go ahead and slide that in there. When you're sliding that down there, just make sure your studs don't hit the crankshaft and nick it up. That dot also, you want to make sure it faces towards the front of the engine. This is my connecting rod cap for piston number 1. Again, just make sure the tang lines up with the little groove right there on the cap. I cut myself a little piece of plastic gauge with a pair of scissors, that way I don't stretch this out. Got that laid right there on the journal for the connecting rod. So this connecting rod has to go back in the exact same spot it came out of. You see how when I close this, there's a C right there? That indicates that I have it positioned correctly, because when you close it, it forms whatever shape or letter that it's supposed to say. So in this case, it's a C or a G. So it's the following day. I actually didn't finish the process yesterday because I needed to get batteries for my torque wrench since my torque wrench died. I'm gonna go ahead and torque this connecting rod cap to 18 foot-pounds and then 90 degrees, and then I'm gonna check to see if we're within the proper specifications as far as the oil clearance goes. There is a new strip of plastic gauge on the connecting rod journal. I did remove the old one from the previous day. I just did not show it on camera. Now that I've got this torque down, I'm going to go ahead and remove it. So it looks like the oil clearance on this connecting rod for cylinder number 1 is about 0.02 of an inch. So I'm going to go ahead and look at the service information and see if that's within spec. The specification for my connecting rod oil clearance, again, since I'm working with a crankshaft that has had no work performed to it, I ordered a set of standard bearings. So I'm going to be looking at the standard measurement. It should be between 9/10 of a thousandths to 0.02 and 0.2 of an inch. And the limit is 0.03 of an inch and 1/10. And since I measured with the plastic gauge on connecting rod number 1, since I measured 0.02 of an inch, it is within the proper specification. I went ahead and I did the remaining 3 cylinders off camera. This is the connecting rod journal for cylinder number 4, and it is at 0.02 of an inch, so that is within the proper specification. This is cylinder number 3, and I'm also at 0.02 of an inch, which is within spec. This is cylinder number 2, and it's at 0.02 of an inch, which is within spec. So now I can confidently say that the oil clearance for my connecting rod bearings and my main rod bearings are within the tolerances that are provided within the service information. So I will be using these aftermarket bearings that I purchased. If you found this video helpful or enjoyed the video, please go ahead and give it a like. If you're liking what you're watching so far on my channel, please go ahead and feel free to subscribe. And if you have any questions or thoughts, please comment them down below. You guys have a good day.